Hello everyone. I will post these videos as soon as possible before an upcoming lesson. This week in particular is a little different. We're going to give everybody flexibility with timing for assignments. Not everyone had their Module 1 assignments done even by this evening. So I wanted to wait as long as possible to ensure I got as many of the assignments looked into and commented on as I could for this evening. One of the things I asked you to do on Module 1 is to post a personal introduction. Everybody did get that done, and I was able to post those all to the colleague information area. So you have one area where you can go in and look at people's backgrounds if you're working with them or commenting on them, so you know who they are and what they're all about relative to their introduction. And I do want to acknowledge everybody in the class just by reading the names. We don't have time to go over all of the bio information, but the names should do us fine for right now. Emily Austin, Don Burney, Marcus Brown, Michelle Brown, Kiati Buchanan, Darrell Butler, Alana Cadle, Asia Campbell, Vernon Clamp. Vernon goes by Trey, T-R-E-Y, so try to remember that as you reply to him. Sarah Cook, Charles Cronk, Andrew Dappin, Taisha Elder, Monica Gleberman, Bailey Horn, Cheyenne Hubbard, Zier Lavelle or Level, and please correct my pronunciation there. Send me an email or a note and let me know the correct pronunciation. Anna Long, Miranda Martin, William McKell or McKeel, same thing, send me a correction as needed. Anna Mitchum, Kyra or Kira Felix, same, correct me there. Will Price, Darren Rector, Kiana Robinson, Logan Ryan, Sydney Shepard, Praise Thorson, and Jessica Turner. Thank you all for being in the class. So now you know that your classmates by name, to some extent anyway, and you probably know some of each other from the MSN program if you're in that one as well. Okay, so first lesson was about John Kotter's article, What Leaders Really Do. Very interesting man, John Kotter. And what's interesting about him, he is an artist when it comes to the written word. If I could only have two books on my bookshelf regarding management and leadership, one of them would be John Kotter's Leading Change. The other would be Good to Great by Jim Collins. And if you've read either of those, you know what I'm talking about in terms of their value. So Kotter just expresses things so well and so efficiently. He takes very complicated ideas in terms of management and leadership and boils them down to their essence. And thus we have this notion of managers coping with complexity and leaders dealing with change. Very insightful idea when that first came out, and that pretty much is his claim to fame there with regard to how leaders and managers behave. So good insight in terms of what Kotter provides us. The first question had to do with that, coping with complexity versus coping with change. Another comment that was made there by a few people was this idea that the leadership side of things might be a little fuzzier or complex and referred to as maybe somewhat objective, that we don't exactly have our fingers on that. Let me rephrase that, somewhat subjective. More precisely, we'd want to say it's qualitative. So in the management and business disciplines, we usually have two sides. One is qualitative, one's quantitative. Leadership and management studies generally fall more toward the qualitative side, although in recent years, management science has propelled us into an area where management activities get quantified more and more and more. But suffice it to say that leadership can be considered a qualitative-oriented discipline, that we study it from that perspective, in the sense that leaders have particular qualities, whereas managers have general qualities, or qualities that can be generalized, like their ability to plan, organize, direct, and control. But we don't necessarily think of leaders in terms of plan, organize, direct, and control. Each of them can have their own unique qualities. Okay, Michelle gave an example from her dermatology group at work, which I thought was particularly interesting. And that's because, to me, it's a simple process to change from paper to an electronic world, but not so simple in her environment, and it took leadership savvy to make that happen. So change in general is difficult. You would think simple changes like paper to electronic would be easy, but again, there are environments where leadership influence is required to make even a change like that one occur. The illustration of coaching a team was used, and I thought this was interesting too, because over time, being a sports fan, I thought to myself, how does it all work? You've got the coach on the sideline. Is he or she the leader of that team, or is it the players on the field in particular positions that are being played that lead and drive that team? I think it might be both. Ancient history I'll share here, but back when John Elway won the Super Bowl for the first time in 1999, Dan Reeves had been a famous coach that had left the Broncos prior to then. And he was the one that led them to 3 Super Bowls in the late 1980s, Dan Reeves and John Elway together. But it wasn't till Elway became the main name on the team and took over the field that they actually achieved the Super Bowl after that. And you can ask yourself this question: how many quarterbacks that won the Super Bowl do you remember versus how many coaches won the Super Bowl that you remember? So that might help you differentiate between who you perceive to be the real leader. I'll give you one final one, since I went to Penn State. Back in 1987, Penn State played the University of Miami for the national championship. And if I got my memory right, Penn State hasn't been back there since to play for that game. That whole game was headlined as Joe Paterno versus Vinny Testaverde. And Vinny Testaverde was the Miami quarterback, and Joe Paterno, of course, was the Penn State coach. So it was interesting that they pitted one leader against another that had 2 different positions on the field. And that was the big buildup to the game. And just for fun today, I Googled this to see what the internet says nowadays about that. And this headline popped up. It says, Penn State steals the show, turnovers topple Testaverde in Miami. So again, they differentiated the quarterback from the other team and the other team's coach in terms of who was the actual leader in the perceptions of the sports writers at the time. Now, Joe Paterno's legacy ended in tragedy. Great leader. I remember parking at Penn State and walking up to campus and walking by his incredibly modest house, just a little tiny house on the edge of campus. Donated a lot of money to the school. The man did a lot of good things. And I have to look back and say, as spectacular as he was, did he make a mistake? And the mistake, not even being the incidents that occurred that he should have reported, but the mistake of leadership, of staying in that position too long. Is there a point in time where you are a leader that you need to step down, no matter how things have gone for you, how well they've gone? And I look at that situation in a very sad way, and I say, I wonder, if he pushed it too far, and if it wasn't time to step down long before then. So just think about that in terms of leadership. Okay, Don made an interesting comment, which will conclude the part about coping with complexity versus leading change, and that is that this is not rocket science, and Cotter does a great job of making sure it's not rocket science for us when he reads things. Other insights that were shared in the discussions: it's a challenge to combine strong leadership and commitment and competency with strong management, I should say. Companies are over-managed and under-led. Cotter pointed that out. Leaders need to be flexible. Leadership must be highly energized to affect change. People are going to only be as enthusiastic as you are in the leadership realm. Leadership's needed when the environment is experiencing change. So somebody needs to take the helm in that case, because the followers are sort of going to be lost about what they're supposed to do at any point in time. Achieving a vision requires motivating people to do that, getting them excited to make that happen. So leadership and vision kind of go hand in hand. And when Cotter writes his book, Leading Change, he focuses on that a whole lot. You have to have the vision out there. You have to create a sense of urgency to make that happen. Okay, learning from leaders at the edge. Good comments there. Understanding that many things are going to happen that are unpredictable, and you need to be ready to respond. COVID, enough said. How many people were ready for that? Being at a latter stage in my life, in terms of more years behind me than many of you, if not most of you, I can tell you that things are going to change. We're always going to face crises like that every 8 or 10 years, or every 3 to 5 years. Something significant's going to happen. COVID's a huge exception to the whole thing. That's just a worldwide phenomenon in terms of its tragic impact. But leadership-wise, always be prepared for change. The old saying goes, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So that perspective comes out there. Other things, the comments about leading at the edge, if you can lead at the edge, you can probably lead in a variety of situations out there. So that's kind of the wisdom behind the book. If you have these skills, you'll be well served no matter where you go and what you do. Okay, capturing what leaders really do was another discussion question that we put out there relative to Cotter. What leaders really do is create a vision for the future. They cope with change, and they create opportunities for their followers to succeed through the changes. In a leadership role, you can't do it all yourself. So the end result is you have to open the door for your followers to step up and do what they need to do. that pretty much wraps up Cotter. Now, the next lesson here is on culture. So here's what fascinates me about the culture thing. And later we're going to contrast this with the emotional intelligence perspective that Goldman offers in Primal Leadership. Shine comes out and says leadership is all about culture. The essence of leadership is managing, building, sustaining the culture in the organization. And he puts a period on it and he says nothing else matters. It's all culture. So then later you have to ask yourself, when we get into Goldman says it's all about emotions. And of course, I guess we're realizing by now that it's probably going to be about both. But that's where Shine's coming from. He says culture is incredibly important in organizations. And this article in particular, he twists it toward learning cultures. So he's basically saying if you really want to build a great organization, you have to build not only the culture, but the culture you're building has to be a culture that is willing to pursue and seek new insights to help propel the organization forward. It's not always going to be the leader that comes through and makes everything happen successfully. It's going to take the people in the organization to develop the new insights as well. And that's how you basically take advantage of all your human capital to help propel the organization towards success. We'll leave it at that, and hope that you enjoy the readings. Glad to have you in the course. Reach out to me anytime if you have any questions, concerns, or comments. Thanks a bunch.